Thank you, Jubitora, and good morning, everyone. Uh, Today, we are going to discuss the topic Beyond Disruptions Building Intelligent Supply Chains. Why this topic is important in today's context is all of us know that the recent pandemic, has disrupted a lot of businesses. And the way businesses have been affected and the way they have responded to the pandemic, there's a lot of learning for us as to how do we manage disruptions and not only avoid any downfall in terms of the business performance, but use it to our advantage in future. Now, to start with, let me reiterate that disruptions are here to stay. The pandemic was definitely a one-off event, but there would be other types of disruptions, and these happen regularly. The pandemic was once in a lifetime. It's really a black swan event in terms of Nassim Taleb. But there would be other gray swan events, whether it's the semiconductor chip shortage or the Suez Canal crisis or the financial crisis that we had about a decade back. There would be disruptions from time to time. There are global disruptions, there are local disruptions, which are caused due to certain disruptions caused due to natural calamities like floods, earthquakes, strikes, etc. So these are more or less, I would call them as gray swan events, but nevertheless, they are disruptions. And then there are different shades of gray. But it's a fact that businesses have to deal with disruptions every now and then. And the way we respond to these disruptions really impacts our competitiveness in a big way. And our ability to respond to these disruptions depends on not only the skill of the people who are managing the disruption, but also governed to a large extent by the design of our supply chain and operations, the way we have designed them. And the design is built in terms of the paradigms that the businesses use for running their businesses, the processes which govern supply chain and operations, and the practices which are incorporated in terms of day-to-day execution. Now, we know that in any disruption, there are some companies who lose out considerably. Some companies even fold out. Some companies stay the course and they bounce back very easily in the new normal. At the same time, there are some other companies, some other businesses who gain significantly. So, for example, during the pandemic, we see that some entire industry sectors like hospitality, travel, tourism, they suffered a lot. They lost out. On the other hand, industry sectors like e-commerce or online education, online gaming, these industry sectors gained significantly. Now, I mentioned that our ability to respond depends a lot on the way the supply chain operations have been designed. Now, in terms of design, the most common design for supply chain and operations is quite fragile in nature. And that's why most of the companies suffer. The majority of companies, their operations have been designed for stable work environment. They are not designed for disruptions. And as a result, whenever there is a disruption, these companies suffer a lot. And they aim to only minimize the losses. If the business has gone down by 30%, how do we make sure that we regain at least 20-25% out of that and lose out only 5%? So their aim is only to minimize the losses, and they try to regain the earlier level of revenue, earnings, market share, whatever be the business metric. So these are more or less the fragile companies. On the other hand, we have seen, and I'm sure all of you would have seen, there are some companies which are much more resilient. Their operations are resilient. And this resilience is built into their design. If that is so, then these companies would quickly bounce back to the normal and they would regain their earlier revenue, their earlier earnings, market share, etc. So the pandemic or such disruptions wouldn't have any impact, any lasting impact on their business metrics. So these are resilient companies. And of late, a lot of companies which have fragile supply chain and operations are trying to become resilient. And is that enough? We also have the concept of anti-fragile, which was again brought out by Nassim Taleb. Now, what is anti-fragile? Anti-fragile is not the antonym of fragile, which means the companies which are not fragile are anti-fragile. No. Anti-fragile means the companies gain whenever there is a disruption. Now, very few companies have it in their design, and our aim should be to make our companies anti-fragile. And these companies emerge much stronger from disruptions. Every time there's a disruption, the companies see a big jump in their revenue, earnings, market share. They gain handsomely and settle at a much higher level compared to the pre-disruption days. Now, how do we build an anti-fragile company? You would agree with me that the aim is to build the anti-fragile companies so that whenever a disruption happens, we not only regain the earlier level, but we settle at a much, much higher level. And there is a way to build an anti-fragile company in terms of its supply chain and operations. And I'll just cover the main two parts, which are the most important parts in building such anti-fragile companies. The first is the concept of demand sensing. How do we know the business context has changed during disruption? And how has it changed exactly? How fast can we detect such a change in context? For example, during the pandemic, or rather when the pandemic struck, there were certain companies which were really caught by surprise in the month of March last year. And they were really sort of frozen in their tracks. They couldn't detect what was changing in the context, how the context would behave in future, or what type of supply chain would they need, what are the changes required in the way they supply to the retail stores, etc. And this change in context can happen at several levels. What we have seen is in terms of supply and demand during the pandemic, but the context could change in terms of consumers. They could change in terms of our partners like vendors, etc. The context could change from the regulatory side or even societal context. So anytime there is a significant change in the context, how do we detect the change fast? That's the first part of it in terms of sensing. And second part is at what granularity can we decipher the shift in pattern? Take the case of demand shift, which happened during the pandemic. How do we know whether the demand would go up in certain channels and it would come down in certain other channels? At what granularity can we decipher this shift? Is it in the e-commerce channel that the demand would go up, the traditional retail would go down, the mom and pop stores would shut down? At what granularity this change would happen in the pattern? And the companies which are able to detect the shift in pattern at the most granular level can design their response accordingly. But if you don't know what is changing and at what granularity is it changing, then it's difficult to respond to any such disruption. The third part is how frequently do you look for such changes? Some companies have a process of detecting these disruptions and also building certain sort of process improvements just in case such a disruption happens in future. How should we respond? But how frequently do you actually look for such changes? Demand shifts happen, for example, all the time. Do we look for these demand shifts only during our annual strategic planning process? Or do we look for it every month in various markets as to how the demand is shifting? Or do we look for it every week? There are companies which look for these demand shifts and the patterns of these demand shifts on a daily basis. So how frequently do you look for such changes? That's what decides how good we are at sensing the change in demand. Take, for example, some of the shifts that we have seen recently. The entire concept of electric vehicles. Some companies detected it much earlier. Some are now scrambling to catch up with other companies and introducing the electric vehicle models. The ban on plastics, or rather minimizing the use of plastics. Again, some companies have been very late, some have been early in terms of looking for alternate materials. The clean energy shift, the autonomous vehicles, drones, artificial intelligence. There are many, many examples that we can think of where the context has changed. And some companies have adapted well to the changing context. Some are struggling and some are really late, and they are suffering as a result of that. So if we want to build an anti-fragile company, we need a strong system of sensing what is changing in the context, how the demand would shift, how the demand has already shifted, and how it's likely to shift in future, and refresh it as frequently as we can. The second part is having sensed the change in context, how do we respond? So the concept of agile response, it comes to our help. And agility means there are two dimensions to agility. One is flexibility, and the second is the responsiveness in terms of fast response. So how flexible are our operations to leverage the trend? For example, during the pandemic, we saw that the demand for certain products like hand sanitizers, hand wash, etc., that went up considerably. And the demand for certain other types of items like hair colors, that went down. Now, how flexible are our manufacturing lines to shift from one product to another? We saw a lot of examples. For example, we saw that Tesla manufactured ventilators on its automotive line. We have seen companies shifting their shampoo line to make hand sanitizers and hand wash, etc. So how flexible are we in terms of the product range that the production line can make, in terms of the capacities that we can invoke at a very short notice? How flexible are we? In terms of manpower availability, in terms of input materials availability, how flexible are our vendors? So the concept of flexibility runs across the value chain, right from the vendors to the manufacturing units to the distribution system. How flexible is that? In case there are disruptions in certain legs of the distribution system, are we resilient enough to reroute the material and ensure that finally the goods reach the consumer in time? So the flexibility is an important parameter, important dimension to make an anti-fragile company. The second is how fast can we respond to the disruption? For example, if we know that the demand for hand sanitizers has gone up maybe 10 times or 20 times or 50 times, how long did we take to step up the production? There are companies who stepped up production overnight. The other companies who took about a month or 2 months, and some are still struggling. A lot of pharmaceutical companies struggled to produce certain products which were in high demand, and certain products where the demand was fluctuating so much that they found it very difficult to respond to the demand shifts. For example, the production of remdesivir, which was in very high demand till December last year, but January onwards, the demand was almost zero. And again in April, the demand shot up. So unless we are flexible in our operations and we have the ability to respond fast to any disruption, it's difficult to be anti-fragile. The way to build anti-fragility, agile response, is using the flow principles that all of us know. The material should not get stuck. It should keep flowing through the operations. Improving the frequency of operations, whether it's logistics, whether it's production runs, whether it's input material supplies. How do we increase the frequency of supplies? How do we lower the batch size, whether it's the minimum order quantity with the vendors or the minimum production run size? How do we keep lowering the batch size? How do we compress the lead time consistently? So these are some of the principles that go a long way in building an agile response to such disruption. I'm sure you know about the concept of frozen planning horizon, where the plans are frozen for a certain period of time. We still have companies which freeze their production plan for a week. And if the demand goes up, the change in production schedule can be done only in week 2 because week 1 is frozen. Now, this frozen production plan goes against all the agility and flow concepts. So our attempt should be to keep reducing the frozen planning horizon and ultimately do away with it. I was working with the pharmaceutical companies, and I was really surprised when they said that we have only 3 months of frozen production plan and we can make any change in the 4th month. Now imagine what would have happened in the month of January when the demand for remdesivir was zero. Their next 3 months production plan was actually zero. And when the demand suddenly shot up in April, they took another 2-3 months to really catch up with the demand. So if you want to build an agile response system, if you want to build an anti-fragile company, there is no concept of any frozen planning horizon, because frozen planning horizon means rigidity. And what we are talking about is flexibility in all our operations. Now, in terms of paradigms, I spoke about paradigms. I'll just give you one paradigm which has been talked about a lot amongst the supply chain professionals, and that's the sourcing paradigm. Over the last few years, we have heard several things, the current paradigms, like low cost shoring. So, for example, can we get material from some of the Far Eastern countries because we get it at a low cost? And several supply chains have shifted their source to Vietnam, China, Taiwan, etc., because of the low cost. The concept of offshoring, the concept of onshoring post-pandemic, so that the material is available at a short notice, nearshoring, the concepts of single sourcing, multi-sourcing. What is ideal? Should we go for a single vendor for each of our input materials, or should we have multi-vendors? In my opinion, all these paradigms use certain lenses which are really the wrong lenses. And if you continue to use the lens of cost or the lens of distance, these are the wrong dimensions to focus on. And if you want to change the paradigm, for example, taking this example of sourcing, what should be the right paradigm? In my opinion, the reliability of supplies is the right paradigm, whether it's done through onshoring or certain very reliable offshore vendors. It doesn't matter. So long as reliability is high, whether we talk of offshoring, onshoring, nearshoring, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the reliability of supplies, and the vendor could be located anywhere. So reliable shoring, in my opinion, is the paradigm that we should go with in sourcing, whether irrespective of where the vendor is located, how far from the factory or how close to the factory, so long as the reliability of supplies is maintained. Just to give you a very common sense example, when we talk of clean energy and solar energy, the source that we depend on is millions and millions of kilometers away. We depend on sun, but it's a reliable source. So the reliability of sourcing is important. The distance doesn't matter. So I thought these are some of the concepts that we should keep at the back of our mind. Again, just to recap, we should be good at sensing the change in demand, the change in the context, business context, and then have a system built on agile response to make the best use, or rather leverage each and every disruption and come out much stronger than the competition. I'm reminded of our body's immune system. So every time we have a disease, the immune system does get stronger. So our businesses should be like that, that every time we face a disruption, we should come out much, much stronger than before. So thanks for the opportunity, and my pleasure to share these thoughts with you.